Let him go. That's what he would want, my stepmother said to the doctor while standing in the center of the hospital corridor with mascara dripping from her cheeks. I replied, "No, he wouldn't want that, and you don't have the authority to decide," after looking at the woman who had spent 20 years removing me from every family picture, Christmas meal, and birthday phone. Then I opened my leather bag and took out a pile of papers. The color drained from her face. I'm 34 years old, and this is the story of the day I had my entire family escorted out of my father's VIP hospital room. Not with tears or screaming, but with a signature he had placed 5 years earlier when no one was watching. If you're watching this, please subscribe and let me know where you are watching from. The call came at 6:52 a.m. on March 14th. I was standing in my kitchen in Houston, pouring coffee into a travel mug, mentally rehearsing the quarterly presentation I had to deliver at 9:00. My phone buzzed against the granite countertop, an unknown number with a 713 area code. I almost let it go to voicemail. "Miss, this is Tors, patient coordinator at Memorial Hospital. I'm calling about Richard." The name hit me like a physical blow. I hadn't spoken to my father in 8 years. 8 years of silence, of holidays spent alone, of pretending I didn't have a family at all. "He was brought in this morning at 5:47 a.m., she continued. "Ischemic stroke. He's currently in the ICU, unconscious. You're listed as his primary emergency contact." I set down the coffee mug. "I'm sorry, his what?" "Primary emergency contact. Your name and number were on a card in his wallet along with a note that says, 'Call first.'" My throat tightened. 8 years of nothing. Not a single phone call, not a birthday card, not even a text message. And somehow my number was still the first thing they found when they searched his pockets. "Is there anyone else I should notify?" asked. "A spouse, perhaps. Our records show he's married to a..." There it was, the name I had trained myself not to react to. "Yes," I heard myself say. "He has a wife, but I'll be there in 20 minutes." I hung up, grabbed my keys, and walked out the door without changing out of my work clothes. The presentation could wait. The quarterly numbers could wait. My father was dying, and for some reason I couldn't explain, he had wanted me to know first. The last time I saw my father was Thanksgiving 2016. I was 26, freshly promoted to senior analyst at Energy. Proud enough to think that professional success might finally earn me a seat at the family table, I drove 4 hours to River Oaks with a bottle of wine that cost more than I could afford, rehearsing what I would say when inevitably made a comment about my clothes or my hair or my life choices. What I didn't rehearse was what she said instead. We were 14 people around the dining table, sisters, her cousins, a few neighbors she 521 wanted to impress. My father sat at the head carving the turkey while held court at the other end. "Richard has 2 children," she announced, raising her glass, "and they've been such a blessing to us." I waited for the correction, for my father to say, 3 children, actually. For someone, anyone, to acknowledge that I was sitting right there between a cousin I'd never met and an empty chair. No one did. Smirked, pulled out her phone and started recording an Instagram story. And my father just kept carving the turkey, his eyes fixed on the blade. "Polly is," paused as if searching for the right word. "She's a reminder of a difficult time in Richard's life. We don't really count her as family." I stood up. I didn't say anything. I didn't throw my wine or flip the table or make a scene. I just walked out, got in my car, and drove back to Houston in the dark. That was the last time I spoke to any of them, until the phone rang 8 years later. Memorial's ICU waiting room smelled like industrial disinfectant and stale coffee. I arrived at 7:45 a.m., still wearing my navy blazer and the heels I'd planned for the boardroom. They were already there. Sat in the corner dabbing her eyes with a tissue that somehow never smudged her makeup. She wore head-to-toe black, as if she'd already planned the funeral. Stood behind her, arms crossed, scrolling through his phone, and was filming herself crying. "Praying for my stepdad," she whispered into the camera. "Send love, everyone." I approached the nurse's station, keeping my voice steady. "I'm here for Richard. I'm his daughter." The nurse, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes, glanced at her screen. "Polly, you're listed as his emergency contact. Let me get the doctor." Behind me, I heard's voice cut through the waiting room. "What is she doing here?" I didn't turn around. Was less subtle. He crossed the room in 3 strides, stopping just close enough that I could smell his cologne. "Who called you? This is a family matter." "The hospital called me," I said, "because my name was in his wallet." "That's impossible." Had risen from her chair, tissues still clutched in her hand. "I'm his wife. I should have been contacted first." The nurse looked up from her computer. "Ma'am, the patient designated Ms. Polly as his primary emergency contact. That's who we're required to notify." His face went rigid. For a moment, I saw something flicker behind her eyes. Not grief, not confusion, but calculation. "There must be some mistake," she said. I looked at her for the first time in 8 years. "Maybe," I said, "or maybe there is." Dr. Samuel Reeves was a tall man in his late 40s with graying temples and the kind of calm that only comes from delivering bad news for decades. He led me to a private consultation room on the 3rd floor, away from glare and phone camera. "Your father suffered a major ischemic stroke at approximately 5:30 this morning," he said, sliding a scan image across the table. "There's significant blockage in the middle cerebral artery. He's currently in a medically induced coma to reduce brain swelling." I stared at the image, a gray mass with dark shadows I couldn't interpret. "What are his options?" "If we perform an intervention within the next 48 hours, his chances of meaningful recovery are around 65%. The procedure costs approximately $180,000, and he'll need extensive rehabilitation afterward." Dr. Reeves paused. "Without the surgery, we're looking at severe permanent disability, or worse." "Then do the surgery." "It's not that simple, Ms." He folded his hands. "Your father can't consent for himself right now. Someone with legal authority needs to sign off on the procedure, the costs, and any decisions about his ongoing care. His wife doesn't automatically have that authority, not in Texas." Dr. Reeves leaned forward. "Do you know if your father ever designated a medical power of attorney?" The question hung in the air. I thought about the emergency contact card, the note that said "call first," the 8 years of silence that suddenly felt like something else entirely. "I need to make a phone call," I said. Dr. Reeves nodded. "Mrs. is already asking to sign paperwork. If there's something I should know, I need to know it soon." I stepped into the hallway and pulled out my phone. Thomas answered on the 2nd ring. "Polly." His voice was warm, unhurried, the same steady baritone I remembered from 5 years ago. "I've been expecting your call." I pressed my back against the hospital wall, watching nurses move past in their quiet efficiency. "You knew about the stroke." "I have alerts set up for Richard's name. Hospital admissions, police reports, obituaries." A pause. "I promised him I would." "Mister, I need to know." "You're his medical power of attorney, Polly, and his durable financial power of attorney. Both documents were signed and notarized on July 8, 2019, at my office. Maria Santos was the notary. Carter witnessed alongside me." I closed my eyes. July 2019. 3 years after I walked out of that Thanksgiving dinner. 3 years of silence. And somewhere in that silence, my father had made a choice. "Why?" The word came out smaller than I intended. His voice softened. "He came to me in June of that year and had been pressuring him to change his will to remove you entirely. He was shaken. He said, 'If something happens to me, Tom, I don't trust anyone but Polly to do the right thing.'" My throat burned. "He never told me." "He said he tried to call you several times. You didn't answer." I remembered those calls, unknown numbers I had sent straight to voicemail, assuming they were spam or, worse, trying to reach me through a different line. "I have the original documents in my office safe," continued. "I've already faxed certified copies to the hospital's legal department. They should be within the hour. and has no idea these documents exist. I opened my eyes. Down the hall, I could see her packing, phone pressed to her ear. She's about to find out. There's something else you need to understand, said, his tone shifting. If you don't act quickly, Will. I watched her through the glass partition, still packing, still talking, her free hand cutting sharp gestures through the air. She's already contacted. He's a family attorney. Handles high-asset divorces and inheritance disputes. My guess is she's going to petition for emergency guardianship, claim you're estranged and unfit to make decisions. Can she do that? She can try. Texas courts generally favor the spouse, but a valid POA supersedes spousal rights when it comes to medical decisions. The problem is if she files before the hospital officially recognizes your authority, you'll be tied up in court while your father's window for surgery closes. 48 hours. That's what Dr. Reeves had said, 48 hours, to save 65% of my father's brain function. What about his finances? The durable financial POA gives you control over all his accounts the moment he's declared incapacitated. That includes the joint accounts with. Paused. Polly, I ran a preliminary check this morning. Richard has approximately $890,000 in liquid assets. In the past 4 months alone, has transferred $127,000 from their joint account into separate accounts under her name, and the number hit me like ice water. $127,000 moved quietly, methodically, while my father was still healthy enough to notice, if he'd been paying attention. She's been preparing, I said. Yes, and if Richard dies before you establish control, that money disappears into probate, and lawyers will tie up his estate for years. I thought about my father's face at that Thanksgiving table, the way he'd kept carving the turkey, eyes down, saying nothing. Maybe he'd been planning, too. Tell me what I need to do. I walked back into the ICU waiting room at 8:47, had upgraded her audience. A man in a gray suit stood beside her now, mid-50s, silver cufflinks, the kind of practiced sympathy that came with a billable hourly rate. I recognized the type from a decade of corporate meetings, the lawyer who made problems disappear for people who could afford it. Completely unacceptable, was saying, loud enough for the nurses to hear. I'm his wife of 20 years. That girl abandoned him. She has no right to be here. I didn't slow down. I walked past her, past glare and phone camera, straight to the nurses' station where a supervisor had appeared. A woman in her 40s with a hospital badge that read Patient Services Manager. Ms. looked up from her computer. I just received documentation from and regarding your father's case. I'd like to register officially as his medical power of attorney, I said, and I'm requesting a formal meeting with the attending physician, hospital administration, and all relevant parties tomorrow morning at 10:00 a.m. Behind me, I heard sharp intake of breath. She can't do that. Stepped forward, his voice smooth as oil. My client is the legal spouse. Any documents signed without her knowledge are subject to challenge. Mr.'s tone was polite but firm. The documents have been by our legal department. Ms.'s authority is recognized by this hospital pending any court order to the contrary. Grabbed my arm. You think you can just walk in here after 8 years and take over? He's my husband. I looked at her hand on my sleeve, then I looked at her face. And he's my father. He chose me. I pulled my arm free and walked away. Caught up with me at the elevator. You're making a mistake. Her voice was low, venomous, stripped of the grieving widow performance she'd been giving the nurses. You have no idea what you're walking into. I pressed the button for the 7th floor. I think I do. Do you? She stepped closer, blocking the elevator doors. You think Richard chose you? He felt guilty, Polly. That's all. Guilty for your mother. Guilty for how things turned out. He signed those papers to make himself feel better, not because he actually trusted you. Then why didn't he tell you about them? Her jaw tightened. Appeared at her shoulder, his face flushed. You need to leave now before this gets ugly. It's already ugly, I said. It's been ugly for 20 years. We're his family. His voice cracked, not with grief, but with something, desperation. You're just a reminder, a mistake he couldn't fix. The elevator doors opened behind her. I stepped around her into the car. I'm the mistake he trusted with his life, I said. What does that make you? The doors began to close. Shoved her hand between them, forcing them back open. You'll regret this. Her eyes were bright with fury. I've spent 20 years building this family, 20 years taking care of him while you played victim. You think a piece of paper changes that? I think it changes everything. The doors closed on her face. I leaned against the elevator wall, my hands shaking for the first time since the phone call that morning. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving something cold and sharp in its place. This wasn't over. Didn't lose gracefully, but neither did I. The conference room on the 7th floor had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Texas Medical Center 21 hospitals, over 100,000 employees, the largest medical complex in the world. From up here, it all looked orderly, controlled. Was waiting for me inside. We've confirmed receipt of both power of attorney documents, she said, sliding a folder across the polished table. Medical and financial, both notarized, both witnessed, both legally binding under Texas Estates Code Section 752. I opened the folder. There they were, my father's signature dated July 8, 2019, beside mine. The handwriting was shakier than I remembered, but unmistakably his. Mrs. has requested that her attorney attend tomorrow's meeting, continued. She's also filed a preliminary inquiry with our ethics committee, claiming you may have exerted undue influence over your father. Undue influence? I almost laughed. I haven't spoken to him in 8 years. Which is precisely what she's arguing, that you're estranged, that you don't know his current wishes, that the documents may have been signed under duress. Paused. I'm not saying she has a case. I'm saying she's going to make noise. What do you need from me? Verification from the attorney who prepared the documents. A statement of your father's intent, if possible. She hesitated. Frankly, miss, I need you to stay calm. Whatever happens in that room tomorrow, the hospital's position is clear. You have legal authority, but if this turns into a public spectacle, it makes everyone's job harder. I thought about's phone always recording, about's talent for playing the victim. I understand, I said, but I should warn you, my stepmother doesn't do anything quietly. His expression didn't change. Neither does this hospital. Security will be present. I stayed at the hospital that night. The ICU had a small waiting area with vinyl chairs and a vending machine that hummed in the darkness. I wasn't allowed into my father's room yet. The POA verification was complete, but visiting hours had ended, and Dr. Reeves wanted to run additional scans before morning. So I sat alone, watching the numbers on the wall clock crawl toward midnight. At 11:47 p.m., I pulled out my phone and opened an email I hadn't read in 5 years. From Richard. To. Date, July 12, 2019, 3:42 p.m. Subject, for when I can't speak for myself. Polly, I know you're not reading my messages. I don't blame you. After what happened at Thanksgiving, after everything I let say and do, you have every right to shut me out. But I need you to know something. I signed papers today, legal papers. Tom has them. If anything ever happens to me, if I get sick, if I can't make decisions for myself, you're the one I trust to make them for me. Not you. I should have protected you. I should have stood up for you every single time she made you feel like you didn't belong. I was weak. I was afraid of being alone again after your mother died, and I let that fear turn me into someone I don't recognize. You're the only one who will do what's right, Polly. Not what's easy, not what's profitable, what's right. I love you. I always have. I'm sorry. I was too much of a coward to show it. Dad. I read it 3 times. Then I closed my eyes and let myself cry for the first time in 8 years. They arrived at 8:00 a.m. sharp, like an army assembling for war. I was in the 7th floor lobby, nursing my 3rd cup of hospital coffee, when the elevator doors opened and stepped out. She had changed her outfit overnight, still black but more structured now, a designer dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Her makeup was flawless, her hair swept into an elegant chignon. She looked like a woman preparing for a press conference, not a family meeting. Flanked her left side, carrying a thick manila folder. Took the right, phone already raised, filming their entrance like a reality TV moment. Behind them came, briefcase in hand, and a woman I didn't recognize, mid-40s, wearing a soft cardigan and an expression of professional concern. "That's Dr. Karen," murmured, appearing at my elbow. "Family therapist, specializes in elder care disputes. Hired a therapist. Looks like she's building a narrative. Concerned wife supported by professionals versus estranged daughter with suspicious legal documents." His voice was neutral, but I caught the warning underneath. Approached the reception desk, his voice carrying across the lobby. "We're requesting a postponement of this morning's meeting until the court can review the validity of the power of attorney documents. My client has serious concerns about coercion and undue influence." I set down my coffee cup and walked toward him. "The meeting is at 10, I said. "I'll see you there." His eyes locked onto mine. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she smiled, a thin, practiced curve of her lips that didn't reach her eyes. "You came alone," she said. "How brave." I looked at her entourage, her lawyer, her therapist, her children with their folders and phones. "I came prepared," I said. "That's different." At 9:15 a.m., called me into her office. Thomas's voice filled the room through the speakerphone, steady and precise as a metronome. "I'm confirming for the record that the medical power of attorney and durable financial power of attorney for Richard were executed on July 8, 2019, at my offices at 1200 McKinney Street, Houston, Texas. The documents were notarized by Maria Santos, Notary Public, County, Commission number 12,847,593. Witnesses present were myself, Thomas, and my legal assistant, Carter." Made notes on her tablet. "And you can verify Mr. was of sound mind when he signed." "Absolutely. I've known Richard for 15 years. He came to me specifically because he had concerns about his wife and attempting to manipulate his estate planning. He was lucid, deliberate, and emphatic about his wishes." Paused. "He told me, and I quote, 'If I can't speak for myself, Polly speaks for me, no one else.'" I stared at the phone, my chest tight. "Under Texas Estates Code Section 752.051, continued, "a properly executed medical power of attorney takes effect immediately upon the principal's incapacity. Spousal consent is not required. Mrs. has no legal standing to override these documents unless she can prove fraud, forgery, or incapacity at the time of signing, none of which apply here." Looked at me. "That's clear enough for our purposes. Ms., the hospital officially recognizes you as the authorized decision-maker for your father's medical care." The words settled over me like armor. "What about this motion to postpone?" Said, "The meeting proceeds at 10:00. She handed me a visitor badge with a blue stripe. "You now have full access to your father's room." Wasn't finished. "There's one more thing you need to know," he said, his voice dropping slightly. "The financial power of attorney." Glanced at me, then at the phone. "We that document as well." "Yes, but I'm not sure Ms. fully understands its implications." Cleared his throat. "Polly, your father also gave you durable financial power of attorney. That means you have complete authority over his financial affairs during his incapacity, bank accounts, investments, real estate, everything." I'd known this in the abstract, but hearing it stated so plainly made my stomach tighten. "I've already First National Bank of Texas and Mercer Wealth Management," continued. "As of 8:00 a.m. this morning, all transactions on Richard's accounts require your signature, including the joint accounts with." The silence stretched. "She doesn't know," I said. "She's about to find out. I suspect that's why she arrived with a lawyer this morning." His tone carried a grim satisfaction. "Polly, I want to be clear about something. Your father's liquid assets total approximately $890,000. In the past 4 months, has transferred $127,000 from their joint account into separate accounts under her name and his name. Those transfers happened while Richard was still healthy, technically legal, but ethically questionable. Can I reverse them? Not the past transfers, but you can prevent any future withdrawals. And when Richard recovers, if he recovers, he can decide whether to pursue legal action. I thought about downstairs assembling her team, preparing her narrative of the grieving wife versus the estranged daughter. She didn't know that the money she'd been counting on was already out of her reach. Thank you, mister. One more thing, Polly. Your father was right about you. Don't let them make you doubt that. I heard before I saw her. What do you mean, declined? Her voice echoed down the 7th floor corridor, sharp enough to cut glass. I stepped out of his office just as she rounded the corner, phone pressed to her ear, her composure cracking at the edges. I'm his wife. I've been on that account for 20 years. There must be some mistake. She stopped mid-stride when she saw me. I'll call you back. She lowered the phone slowly, her eyes never leaving my face. What did you do? I said nothing. I tried to transfer funds this morning for medical expenses. Her voice was controlled now, but I could see her hands trembling. The bank said the account is under the management of an authorized representative. They wouldn't tell me who. Appeared behind her, his face flushed. Mom, what's going on? She did something. Took a step toward me. You did something to his accounts. I didn't do anything, I said calmly. My father did 5 years ago. The color drained from her face. He gave me financial power of attorney, I continued, which means that as long as he's incapacitated, I control his assets, all of them, including the joint accounts. His mouth opened, then closed. For the first time since I'd arrived at this hospital, she looked genuinely afraid. You can't. Stepped forward, his voice rising. That's our money. It's his money, I said, and he trusted me with it, not you. Appeared at the end of the corridor, briefcase in hand. We need to talk now. She didn't move. She just stared at me, her carefully constructed world crumbling behind her eyes. This isn't over, she whispered. No, I agreed. It's just beginning. I know many of you watching have been through something similar. Overlooked by your family, treated like an outsider in your own home, made to feel like you don't belong. If this story is hitting close to home, hit that like button and leave me a comment. I read every single one. And if you want to see what happens in the meeting that's about to start, keep watching. The conference room filled at exactly 10:00 a.m. I sat at one end of the long table. Sat at the other, flanked by, and Dr. Karen. Took a neutral position near the door, tablet in hand. Dr. Reeves stood by the window, his expression carefully blank. 2 security officers waited in the hallway outside. Open with tears. I've been Richard's wife for 20 years, she said, her voice breaking on cue. I've been by his side through everything. His business struggles, his health scares, his grief over his first wife. I'm the one who held his hand every night. I'm the one who knows what he would want. She dabbed her eyes with a tissue. And now, after 8 years of complete silence, his estranged daughter appears out of nowhere with legal documents I've never seen, trying to take control of his care, of his finances. Nodded gravely. We're requesting that the hospital suspend recognition of these documents pending a full legal review. There are serious questions about whether Mr. was competent when he signed and whether he was subjected to undue influence. Dr. Reeves shifted slightly. Mrs., I've reviewed your husband's medical history. There's no indication of cognitive impairment in 2019 when these documents were signed. He was grieving, said quickly. He'd been depressed for years after what happened with his mother. He wasn't thinking clearly. I watched her performance, the trembling lip, the strategic pauses, the way she angled her body toward the security cameras like she knew she was being recorded. She was good. 20 years of practice had made her very good. But I had something better than tears. I had the truth. Opened his manila folder with the satisfaction of a man playing his trump card. I have documentation here, he announced, proving that has had no meaningful contact with her father since November 2016. No phone calls, no emails, no visits, nothing. He slid a stack of papers across the table. Phone records, I realized, screenshots of unanswered calls. Richard tried to reach out to her multiple times, continued. She ignored him every single time. He looked at me with undisguised contempt. This is not a loving daughter. This is someone who abandoned her father when he needed her and is now showing up to collect. Brittany nodded vigorously. She didn't even come to my brother's wedding. Dad was devastated. I wasn't invited, I said quietly. That's not true. I have the email. I kept my voice level. From explaining that my presence would cause unnecessary tension and that Richard agreed it was best if I stayed away. His expression flickered just for a moment, recovered quickly. Regardless of past family dynamics, the question before us is whether Ms. is qualified to make life-or-death decisions for a man she hasn't spoken to in 8 years. A man whose current wishes she cannot possibly know. I know his wishes, I said, because he wrote them down. In documents you somehow obtained without his wife's knowledge. In documents he specifically kept from his wife's knowledge. I met's eyes. Have you asked yourself why he might have done that? The room went silent. His face reddened. You're twisting everything. You always do this. You make yourself the victim when you're the one who. His voice was sharp, not now. But the damage was done. The first crack had appeared. His voice cut through the tension. Excuse me, Ms. Mercer. Are you recording this meeting? Everyone turned to look at. Her phone was propped against her water glass, the screen facing the table, a small red dot blinking in the corner. I'm documenting for my followers, said, as if this were perfectly normal. They have a right to know what's happening to our family. I glanced at the screen. The live stream counter showed 847 viewers. Comments scrolled rapidly. Kick her out. Gold digger daughter. Team, this is so sad. This is a private medical consultation, said firmly. Recording is not permitted without consent from all parties. It's fine. I surprised myself with how calm I sounded. Let her record. His eyes narrowed. In fact, I continued, I want everyone watching to hear what I'm about to say since followers seem so interested in the truth. Hesitated, then adjusted her phone to get a better angle. The viewer count climbed. 923, 1047, 1156. Go ahead, Polly. His voice dripped with false sweetness. Tell everyone your version of events. Tell them how you abandoned your father for 8 years and now suddenly care about his well-being. The comments exploded. She's nervous. The stepdaughter looks guilty, is such a strong woman. I looked directly into his camera. You called me a stranger, I said. You said I don't belong in this family. You said Richard only has 2 real children. I paused. So, let me show you what your real family looks like to the man you claim to love. I opened my briefcase and pulled out a folder. Let's start with an email my father sent me 5 years ago. I stood up slowly, holding the folder against my chest. Before I show you this, I said, I want to confirm something for the record. I looked at. This meeting is being officially documented by the hospital. Audio recording, yes. Standard procedure for disputed medical decisions. Good. I turned back to the table because I want everything I'm about to say to be on the record. And I glanced at his phone, where the viewer count had climbed past 2,000. I want everyone watching to hear it, too. Shifted in her seat. What are you doing? Something I should have done 8 years ago. I opened the folder. I'm telling the truth. Leaned forward. Ms., I would advise you to consult with your own attorney before making any statements that could. I don't need an attorney. I pulled out the first document, a printed email with the header clearly visible. I have evidence. The room went still. This is an email from my father, Richard, sent to me on July 5th, 2019, 3 days before he signed the power of attorney documents. I held it up so camera could capture the header. The subject line reads, I need to talk to you. His face went pale. Would you like me to read it aloud? I asked. Or should I just summarize the part where my father explains that his wife and stepson were pressuring him to remove me from his will entirely? Half rose from his chair. That's a lie. Sit down. My voice was quiet, but something in it made him freeze. I'm not finished. I looked at her perfect makeup and her designer dress and her 20 years of carefully constructed lies. I'm just getting started. I read the email aloud, my voice steady. Polly, I know you don't want to hear from me. I don't blame you. After what happened at Thanksgiving, after everything I let say and do, you have every right to shut me out. His hand tightened on her tissue. But I need you to know something, and have been pressuring me to change my will. They want to remove you entirely. They say you're not really part of the family anymore, that you forfeited your rights when you stopped speaking to us. I looked up. His face had gone from red to white. I told them no. I told them you're my daughter, my only biological child, and nothing changes that. Didn't take it well. She's been different since then. Colder. I think she's planning something, but I don't know what. The room was silent, except for the soft hum of the air conditioning. I'm meeting with Tom next week. I'm going to sign papers that give you control if anything happens to me. I don't trust anymore. I don't trust, but I trust you, Polly. I've always trusted you, even when I was too weak to show it. I set the paper down on the table. This email was sent from my father's personal account. The header is intact. The metadata can be by any IT professional. I looked at, would you like to challenge its authenticity? He said nothing. My father knew, I said softly. He knew what you were doing. He knew what you were planning. And he made sure that when the time came, you wouldn't be able to take everything from him. His composure finally cracked. That's not he wouldn't. He did. I pulled out the second document. This is a certified copy of the medical power of attorney signed by Richard on July 8th, 2019. I laid it flat on the table, the notary seal clearly visible. Notarized by Maria Santos, Notary Public, County, Texas. Commission number 12,847,593. Witnessed by Thomas, attorney at law, and Carter, legal assistant. Nodded, we've this document with Mr.'s office. And this, I placed a second document beside the first, is the durable financial power of attorney, signed the same day with the same witnesses, granting me full authority over my father's financial affairs during any period of incapacity. Reached for the documents, I pulled them back. You can request copies through the hospital's legal department, I said, but I want to be clear about what these papers mean. I looked at, they mean that my father, the man you claim to have cared for, the man you say you know better than anyone, deliberately and secretly gave me control over his medical decisions and his finances. Not you, not me. He was manipulated, said, her voice rising. You must have. I hadn't spoken to him in 3 years when he signed these documents. I kept my voice level. I didn't ask him to do this. I didn't know he was doing it. He made this choice entirely on his own because he didn't trust you. The live stream comments had shifted. I could see them scrolling on screen. Oh, damn, plot twist. The stepmom is shaking. This is insane. Spoke into the silence. For the record, the hospital recognizes Miss as the legal decision-maker for patient Richard. This recognition is effective immediately. Stood up so fast her chair scraped against the floor. This is insane. Her voice had lost its careful modulation. I'm his wife. I've been his wife for 20 years. You can't just walk in here with some papers and take everything. Mrs. Dr. Reeves stepped forward, his tone professionally calm. Perhaps we should take a short break. I don't need a break. She slammed her palm on the table. I need someone to explain to me how this is legal. How a daughter who abandoned her father gets more rights than his own wife. Grabbed her arm. Mom, calm down. She shook him off. Don't tell me to calm down. She's stealing everything we built, everything we. She stopped herself, but not quickly enough. I saw it register on's face, on Dr. Reeves's face, on the faces of the 2 security officers who had stepped into the doorway. Everything we built. Not everything Richard built. Everything they built. As if his money, his house, his life were joint projects she had invested in and now expected returns on. His phone was still recording. The viewer count had passed 8,000. The comments were no longer on side. She just said the quiet part out loud. It was always about the money. The stepmom is unhinged. "You'll regret this," said, her voice dropping to something low and dangerous. "I'll take this to court. I'll prove those documents are fraudulent. I'll prove you manipulated him." "You can try," I said quietly. "But you'll lose because my father knew exactly what he was doing, and he made sure there would be witnesses." Stared at me, breathing hard. Then she turned to do something. He didn't move. I stood up and addressed Dr. Reeves directly. "I want my father to have the intervention surgery within the next 24 hours. I'll sign whatever paperwork is necessary." Dr. Reeves nodded. "I'll have the surgical team prepped by tomorrow morning." Regarding the VIP suite, I turned to. "I'll be covering all costs personally, and I'd like to update the approved visitor list." Of course, had her tablet ready. Who should be included? I looked at Brittany, still holding her phone, her live stream audience now over 12,000 people. "Just me." The words landed like stones in still water. "You can't do that," said. He's my father." I kept my voice calm, professional, exactly the way I'd learned to speak in boardrooms full of men who didn't want to hear me. "And for 20 years, you've told me I'm not part of this family, that I'm a stranger, a reminder of something Richard wanted to forget." I looked at, "So, I'm treating you the way you've always treated me." I turned to the security officers in the doorway. "These people are not on the approved visitor list. Please escort them from the VIP floor." His face contorted. "You can't, this is." "Ma'am," the taller security officer stepped forward. "I'm going to have to ask you to come with us. I'm his wife, and I'm his daughter." I met her eyes one last time, the one he chose. The security officers moved forward, gathered his briefcase without protest. He knew a lost cause when he saw one. Finally lowered her phone, her face pale. Looked like he wanted to hit something. Was the last to leave, her heels clicking against the floor. She didn't look back. If you've ever had to stand up for yourself against people who tried to crush you, leave a comment and share your story. I read every single one. And if you're wondering what happened next with my father, with everything, keep watching because the meeting was just the beginning. The real consequences were still coming. The surgery happened at 7:00 a.m. on March 17th. I sat in the waiting room for 4 hours and 23 minutes, watching the clock and drinking coffee that tasted like cardboard. Dr. Reeves had explained the procedure the night before, threading a catheter through my father's femoral artery, navigating it up to his brain, removing the clot that was slowly killing him. A 65% chance of meaningful recovery, he'd said. Better odds than Vegas, worse odds than I wanted. At 11:23 a.m., Dr. Reeves appeared in the doorway, still in his surgical scrubs. The procedure was successful. I didn't realize I'd been holding my breath until I let it out. We removed the clot and restored blood flow to the affected area. He continued, sitting down across from me. He's in recovery now, still sedated but stable. What's the prognosis? Optimistic with caveats. Dr. Reeves pulled out a tablet showing me scan images I couldn't fully interpret. He'll need 3 to 6 months of rehabilitation. There may be some lasting weakness on his left side, and we won't know the full extent of cognitive impact until he's fully conscious, but his brain function looks better than I expected. When can I see him? Give us a few hours to get him settled in the ICU. Then you can sit with him. He paused. Miss, I want you to know, if we'd waited another 24 hours, like Mrs. was suggesting, his chances would have dropped below 30%. Your decision to proceed immediately may have saved his life. I nodded, not trusting my voice. You made the right call, Dr. Reeves said. Whatever else happens with your family, remember that. I would for the rest of my life. I would remember that. While my father recovered, I made phone calls. First National Bank of Texas, Mercer Wealth Management, the property management company that handled my father's rental properties in. One by one, I introduced myself, provided the POA documentation, and requested the same thing: freeze all outgoing transactions until further notice. The bank manager, a woman named Sandra, was particularly helpful. "We've already flagged some unusual activity on Mr.'s accounts," she said over the phone. In the past 4 months, there have been multiple transfers totaling $127,000 to accounts held by Ann Mercer, all technically legal since Mrs. is a joint account holder. But the pattern is concerning. Small amounts at first, $5,000 here, $8,000 there. Then larger transfers in the past 6 weeks, $25,000 on February 3rd, $40,000 on February 28th. She paused. It looks like someone was testing the waters, then accelerating. I thought about the timeline. February. My father would have been healthy then, going about his normal life, probably not checking his bank statements closely. Would have had plenty of time to move money without him noticing. Can I reverse those transfers? Unfortunately, no. They were authorized transactions from a joint account, but I can ensure no further withdrawals occur without your explicit approval. Sandra's voice carried a note of professional sympathy. Mr. has approximately $890,000 remaining in liquid assets. I'll make sure it stays that way. Thank you. I hung up and stared at my phone. $127,000 gone. Moved into accounts I couldn't touch by a woman who was probably already planning how to spend the rest. But she wouldn't get another cent, not while I was watching. My father had trusted me to protect what was his. I wasn't going to fail him. He opened his eyes on March 19th, 5 days after the stroke. I was sitting beside his bed, reading a financial report on my tablet when I heard the change in his breathing. The monitors beeped a slightly different rhythm, and then his hand moved, just slightly, just enough to brush against mine. "Polly." His voice was barely a whisper, rough from the breathing tube they'd removed the day before, but he said my name like it was the only word that mattered. "I'm here, Dad." I set down the tablet and took his hand properly, feeling how thin his fingers had become. "I'm here." His eyes, cloudy, confused, but unmistakably his, focused on my face. "You came." "Of course I came. I knew you would." He tried to smile, but it came out lopsided, the left side of his face not quite cooperating. "I always knew." I wanted to say so many things. I wanted to ask him why he'd never stood up for me, why he'd treat me like garbage for 20 years, why he'd waited until he was dying to finally choose me. I wanted to tell him about the meeting, about his face when she realized she'd lost, about the 12,000 people who'd watched her humiliation live on the internet. But none of that mattered right now. "Don't try to talk," I said instead. "You need to rest." Polly, his grip tightened, weak but insistent. "I'm sorry for everything. I should have." "I know," my voice cracked. "I know, Dad." We sat there in the quiet of the hospital room, father and daughter. 8 years of silence finally broken. Not with explanations or accusations, but with something simpler. Presence, forgiveness, a beginning. The hard conversations could wait. For now, this was enough. Didn't wait long to strike back. 2 weeks after my father regained consciousness, I received a certified letter at my apartment. The return address was the law offices of an Associates. The contents were exactly what Thomas had predicted: petition for emergency guardianship and of Richard. The filing alleged that I had exerted undue influence over my father, that the POA documents were obtained through manipulation of a vulnerable elderly person, and that, as his loving wife of 20 years, was the only appropriate guardian for his medical and financial decisions. "She's going to lose," said when I called him. "The documents are ironclad and Richard is conscious now. He can testify to his own intentions, but she's going to make noise first." "Oh, absolutely." Already gave a statement to the Houston Chronicle, called it a textbook case of elder financial abuse. His voice carried a hint of dark amusement. "The article ran this morning. You might want to avoid the comment section." I pulled up the article on my phone. The headline read, "Family Feud, Estranged Daughter Accused of Manipulating Dying Father's Estate." There was a photo of looking appropriately grief-stricken and a quote from about protecting vulnerable seniors from predatory relatives. My inbox was already filling with messages. Some supportive strangers who'd seen live stream and remembered the truth. Others vicious people who'd read the article and decided I was exactly the monster described. "What do we do?" I asked. "We let your father speak for himself," said. "When he's strong enough, we'll get a video deposition, his own words on the record, confirming everything. And until then, we wait and we don't let them see us sweat." 1 month after the stroke, my father was strong enough to fight. The video deposition was recorded in his hospital room on April 14th with a court reporter present, Thomas asking the questions, and a neurologist standing by to confirm his mental. His lawyer had demanded to attend. The judge allowed it over subjections. Sat in the corner taking notes, his face carefully neutral. My father sat propped up in his hospital bed, thinner than I remembered, but with a clarity in his eyes that hadn't been there in years. "Mr. began, did you sign medical and financial power of attorney documents on July 8th, 2019? "Yes," my father's voice was stronger now, though still slightly slurred on the left side. "I signed them at your office. Maria Santos notarized them. Carter witnessed." "Were you coerced or manipulated into signing these documents?" "No," he looked directly at the camera. "I signed them because I wanted to, because I needed to protect my daughter." "Protect her from whom?" My father's gaze shifted too. "From my wife, from her children, from people who saw me as a bank account instead of a person." He paused and had been pressuring me to change my will. They wanted to cut Polly out entirely. When I refused, started withdrawing, pulling away, I knew something was wrong. "And you chose your daughter as your representative." "Polly is the only person I trust to do what's right." His voice cracked. "I failed her for 20 years. I let treat her like she didn't exist. But I never stopped loving her. And I knew that when it mattered, she would be there." He looked at me. She was. The ruling came down on April 28th. Judge of County Probate Court didn't mince words. I read the decision 3 times. Sitting in my apartment with a glass of wine, I'd been saving for a special occasion. The petitioner has failed to demonstrate any evidence of fraud, coercion, or undue influence in the execution of the power of attorney documents. The principal, Richard, has provided clear and competent testimony confirming his intent and his continued confidence in his designated agent. The petition for emergency guardianship is hereby. There was more, legal language about burden of proof, citations of Texas Estates Code, a pointed reference to the speculative and unsupported nature of claims. But the bottom line was simple. She lost. The court ordered to pay $12,400 in legal fees and court costs. From the case the same day, citing irreconcilable differences with the client. The Houston Chronicle ran a follow-up article with a notably different tone. Judge dismisses guardianship petition. Father confirms trust in estranged daughter. Brittany deleted her Instagram account entirely. The live stream that had been meant to humiliate me had been archived and shared thousands of times. But now it told a different story, not the story of a gold-digging daughter, but the story of a stepmother losing control in real time. Called me once, 3 days after the ruling. I let it go to voicemail. His message was short. "You think you've won? You haven't. This isn't over." I saved the voicemail just in case. But I knew the truth. It was over. Not because I'd beaten them, but because they'd beaten themselves. All I'd done was show up with the truth. The truth had been enough. The divorce was finalized on July 15th. My father filed the papers himself 3 months after leaving the hospital. His recovery had been better than anyone expected, 85% of his motor function restored. His cognitive abilities largely intact. His determination to rebuild his life stronger than ever. Fought it. Of course, she demanded half of everything. The house in River Oaks, the investment accounts, the rental properties in. Her lawyers argued that 20 years of marriage entitled her to an equal share of the marital estate. But my father had been more careful than she realized. The prenuptial agreement he'd signed in 2005, the one had apparently forgotten about, limited her settlement to $150,000 in the event of divorce. His attorney at the time had insisted on it, and my father, still grieving my mother's death, had been too numb to argue. Now, that numbness saved him nearly $2 million. Moved to Oklahoma 3 weeks after the divorce was final. Her sister had a spare bedroom and Houston society. The charity galas, the country club lunches, the network of wealthy friends she'd cultivated for 2 decades, had quietly closed its doors. Word travels fast in those circles. The live stream had seen to that. Lost his job at the luxury car dealership in August. The owner, it turned out, was an old business partner of my father's. He'd seen the video. He'd read the court documents. He didn't want that kind of person representing his brand. His Instagram following dropped from 45,000 to 33,000 in the months following the trial. She rebranded twice, deleted hundreds of posts, and eventually stopped posting altogether. I didn't celebrate their downfall, but I didn't mourn it either. They had built their lives on my father's money and my exclusion. Now they had neither. My father sold the River Oaks house in September. Too many ghosts, he said, signing the closing documents with a hand that still trembled slightly. I don't want to live with furniture, curtains, memories. I want something new. He found an apartment in 3 blocks from mine. A 2-bedroom with a small balcony overlooking a courtyard garden, modest by his old standards, but more than enough for a man learning to live alone for the first time in 20 years. We had dinner together every Thursday. Sometimes I cooked. Sometimes we ordered Thai food from the place on. Sometimes we just sat on his balcony with glasses of wine watching the sun set over the Houston skyline. He told me stories about my mother, things I'd never known. How they'd met at a college football game, how she'd laughed at his terrible jokes, how she'd held my hand in the delivery room and whispered my name before anyone else. 20 years of silence, and suddenly I had a mother again, alive in my father's memories. I should have told you sooner, he said one evening, his voice heavy with regret. I should have kept her alive for you, but she didn't want to hear about Sarah. She said it made her feel like a replacement. She was a replacement, I said quietly. He nodded. I know. I knew it then, too. But I was lonely, Polly. After your mother died, I was so lonely I couldn't breathe, and was there and she was warm, and I thought. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. We can't change the past, I said, but we can do better now. He took my hand, his grip stronger than it had been in months. Yes, he said, we can. His email arrived in October. Polly, I know you probably don't want to hear from me. I don't blame you. I said things I shouldn't have said, did things I shouldn't have done. I was angry and scared and I took it out on you. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm just asking for a chance to talk, to explain, to maybe start over. I read it twice, then closed my laptop and went for a walk. The thing about boundaries is that they're not about punishment. They're about protection. Wasn't reaching out because he'd had some profound moral awakening. He was reaching out because his life had fallen apart and he was looking for someone to blame or someone to save him. I wasn't going to be either. I wrote back 3 days later after consulting with my therapist and my father. I appreciate you reaching out. I don't hold hatred toward you, and I hope you find peace and stability in your life, but I don't have space for a relationship with you right now. Maybe not ever. What happened wasn't just a misunderstanding. It was years of deliberate cruelty, and I'm still healing from it. If you genuinely want to make amends, start with my father. He's the one you owe an apology to, not me. I wish you well. Polly. He never responded. Neither did. She never reached out at all, which was probably for the best. I told my father about the email over dinner that Thursday. You handled it right, he said. Forgiveness doesn't mean opening the door again. Sometimes it just means putting down the weight. I thought about that for a long time afterward. Putting down the weight. That's exactly what it felt like. People ask me sometimes what I learned from all of this. They expect me to say something profound about family or forgiveness or the power of standing up for yourself. And those things are true, I suppose. But the real lesson was simpler than that. Sometimes the people who love you the most are the ones who show it the least. My father spent 20 years failing me. He let erase me from family photos. He sat silent while she told a room full of people I wasn't his real daughter. He chose peace over justice, comfort over courage, and he let me pay the price for his weakness. But he also spent those same 20 years preparing for the moment when he couldn't protect himself anymore. He put my name in his wallet. He signed papers that gave me power over his life and his money. He wrote me an email I didn't read for 5 years explaining everything he couldn't say out loud. He loved me. He just didn't know how to show it until it was almost too late. I think about the people watching this who are going through something similar. Maybe you have a parent who never stands up for you. Maybe you have siblings who treat you like you don't exist. Maybe you've spent years wondering if you're the problem, if you're the one who's broken, if you're the one who doesn't deserve to be loved. You're not the problem, you're not broken, and you absolutely deserve to be loved. But you also deserve to protect yourself, to set boundaries, to walk away from people who hurt you, even if they're family. That's not selfishness, that's self-respect. And sometimes self-respect is the most radical act of love you can offer yourself. It's been 18 months since that phone call at 6:52 a.m. I got promoted to Director of Financial Planning at Energy last spring, a 22% raise and an office with a window. My father jokes that I'm finally making enough money to take care of him in his old age. I tell him he's not that old yet. He's writing a memoir. Nothing fancy, just a spiral notebook he fills with stories about his life, his childhood in Galveston, his years building his business, his marriage to my mother. There's a whole chapter about me, he says, about the daughter he almost lost and the second chance he doesn't deserve. We're going to Hawaii next month. It'll be our first real vacation together since I was 12 years old, before my mother got sick, before everything fell apart. He wants to see the volcanoes. I want to see him happy. I still think about sometimes, not with anger anymore, just a kind of distant curiosity, like wondering what happened to someone you knew in high school. She's living in Oklahoma now, I hear, working part-time at a real estate office. Is selling insurance somewhere in Dallas. Got engaged to a guy she met at a coffee shop. I hope she's happy. I don't wish them harm. I just don't wish them anything at all. The truth is, family isn't about blood. It's not about legal documents or shared last names or who shows up at Thanksgiving dinner. Family is about who chooses you, who fights for you, who shows up when everything falls apart. My father chose me, and I chose him back. That's enough. That's more than enough. That's everything. Thank you for staying until the end of my story. If you've been through something similar, or if this story touched you in any way, leave a comment and let me know. Do you think I should have forgiven? Did I do the right thing by setting boundaries with? I want to hear your thoughts. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next story. See you soon.